It's what some people, definitely people within the realm of what we talk about, would consider poetic justice. And as many negative stories as I give you guys, and this one has a murder, so it's not a positive story in and of itself, but it's got a little bit of a silver lining. And if you've been watching these videos for a little while, I feel like you could use some silver lining. I certainly can. So, silver lining, here we come. On Friday, May 6th, Joseph McKinnon told a neighbor that the hole that he was digging in his yard was to add a water element to his garden. But when a different neighbor saw Joseph laying on the ground near the pit on Saturday, not moving, they called 911. Officers from the Edgefield County Sheriff's Department in South Carolina responded to the 911 call at about 10 a.m. The neighbor who called 911 did try to revive him through chest compressions. However, when medical crews got there and also tried to revive him, they determined that he was dead. Sheriff Jody Rowland said that they had suspected that he had a heart attack because there was no trauma to his body. It didn't look like anybody had attacked him. In fact, it seemed like he had put a shovel down from filling in this hole, turned around, started to walk away, and collapsed and died. With no one else at home, deputies set out to find his next of kin. However, he says, we had a hard time finding his significant other. As it turned out, McKinnon's girlfriend, Patricia Dent, 65, was supposed to be at work that morning at the Mount Vintage Golf Club in North Augusta, but she hadn't shown up. She also wasn't answering calls or responding to text messages, which was extremely not like her. Everybody at her work was concerned before they even got there. They just didn't know what they were stepping into. Somebody from Patricia's work had even called her twin sister Pamela, who lives in California on the complete other side of the country.
She wanted to know if I knew where my sister was. I said, no, I have no idea. So then it just started to play out then.
Since they couldn't find Patricia, deputies returned their focus to the house and the pit that he was digging or filling in. We continued to investigate the yard and this huge garden, Rowland says. The house had been freshly cleaned, but we were able to identify blood in the house that tested as hers. That took us back to the pit that he was digging and had partially filled back in. We got down in the pit and started digging around, he says. We uncovered it enough that we found black garbage bags. Inside of those garbage bags was Patricia's body, bound with tape, so a forensics team was called in. We were very certain of what we thought had happened, Rowland says, adding that the autopsy results filled in the gaps. She had been hit in the face, but that was certainly not a death blow. The autopsy proved that she died from strangulation. Can you imagine strangling a 65-year-old woman? Ugh. Ugh. But his autopsy proved that he had died from a massive heart attack. Cue poetic justice. The sheriff theorized that after strangling Patricia in their home, McKinnon bound her with tape and wrapped her body in 2 large trash bags, dragging it through the house to his truck, which he then drove to his garden, where he had previously dug the pit. The truck was still parked in the garden when deputies arrived. And this makes me wonder, like, he was digging this pit the day before. This sheriff said basically the case is over. Like, she's dead, her killer's dead, what more is there? But for the sake of her loved ones, and maybe even his loved ones, it'd be kind of nice to know what happened. And I would say that this was a premeditated murder, because he was digging this hole the day before. Unless she had been dead since the day before, and the autopsy would determine that too. Apparently he had been covering the hole, which didn't make sense to a witness. Rowland said he was feverishly covering the pit. He attacked her, killed her, put her in the pit, and then died covering her up. Rowland said that he knew of no domestic abuse history between this couple, and that his department had no logged visits to this address for some kind of a domestic incident. Basically, this case is over. It seems like they're making a little bit of a joke out of it. It's not a joke, it's a murder. It's just poetic justice that he died to. We get to surpass that whole taxpayers paying for his time in prison until he dies thing. And it's very, very common that we don't see justice the way that we should for these things. So, he's kind of nice. Her last Facebook post was in 2016. Her sister Pamela said that they had met online around 2017 at some point or another, which is about 5 years.
I'm shocked. I didn't see any of that coming.
Her twin sister Pamela says there were no signs of any of this happening.
Everybody who ever met her liked her. She was just, she's full of energy. She's 65 and working.
I had the opportunity to talk to Pamela, and she expressed the same thing to me. It's very difficult for somebody to see signs when they live on other sides of the country. And she said that they tried to see each other in person about once a year. If Patricia was in a domestic violence relationship, it would have been very easy for her to hide that. And Pamela wanted to believe that she would have known because they were very close. But domestic violence has this way of pulling people away from other loved ones, family, and friends outside of your significant other. And there's a shame involved that can keep this stuff hidden. So it's possible. And it's possible that he didn't show signs. The belief system can be there without necessarily having that stuff come out. If you have looked at the Chris Watts story, he murdered his pregnant wife and his 2 daughters so that he could begin a new life with this new woman that he met, that he decided that he had fallen for. He wasn't abusive in that family before that point. There was still obviously some underlying belief that he had a right to take their lives, that their value as human beings, as human life, was less than his desire to be happy with himself. That's a belief system. But he didn't necessarily show signs beforehand, so it's possible. The goal of these videos is to teach women what signs to look for so that you have a better chance of being able to see them. Be aware that sometimes they're not very visible. You know, it's one thing to look at a sign or a red flag like a history of abuse, like abusing other women, or growing up in a childhood home where they either were abused themselves or witnessed abuse. Those are very obvious signs. What is different, though, is when he puts his identity in you, so much so that he can't live without you. That can look like a loyal, faithful, wonderful significant other until you try to separate from them. That doesn't look scary or bad or traumatic until it is, but it's still a sign. We won't know what happened that caused this incident.
Sis, you will forever be a part of me. You could never leave a room quietly. Why start now? So many people loved you. I hope to be with you again, but I have to get through this life without you in it. I know the void I feel will be replaced with joy of you in time. It won't be anytime soon. I love you so much and will keep you alive through the things I do this day forward. Hugs, my sister. I will survive for the both of us. I love you with my everything. Patricia has also left behind 13 dogs, 2 labs, and 11 little dogs. She loved them dearly. They were her babies.
The person that gets murdered is not the only victim. I was very clearly reminded when I was talking to her sister how painful this is for loved ones. That seems obvious, but when you're in the middle of dealing with an abuser, it can be really easy to tell yourself, well, it's just me that they're hurting. If I can contain it and I can protect everybody else, or if I pull away from my family and friends, then it's just me that it's hurting. I can isolate and insulate everybody else from being hurt very much from this. It's just me. And that's not true. So if you're telling yourself that it's only going to affect you, that you're the only one that's getting hurt, I can tell you that that's not true. If you are concerned about your relationship, if it scares you, if you're worried that they're going to hurt you, please contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline. You can do it through text, you can do it through the phone, and you can do it online. Get it done. Get a hold of them, make a personalized safety plan for yourself, and figure out how to get out of the situation. with other people, with support, as safely as possible. This is no joke. This stuff happens all the time. Until I see you again, please stay safe.